وقنا عذاب النار والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. وقال تعالى ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الراحمون يرحمهم الرحمن يرحمهم من في الأرض يرحمهم من في السماء. I would like to begin my talk today with some disclaimers. Number one, whenever I mention culture, I don't mean every single person in that culture is like that, or every single person in that culture has that mindset, or every single person in that culture is like that. Rather, I'm just speaking about my experience based on observation, based on what I hear from others. I'm gonna use the word culture. So when I say culture, I don't mean every single individual that is from that culture. Culture is an integral part of our lives. Every single human being has some culture, or is influenced by some culture. So when I say culture, I don't mean every single individual. Again, it's just speaking in a manner so that people can understand that, okay, this is not good, I need to stay away from it. This is good, so this is something I can adopt. Number two, when I mention something negative, I don't mean that every aspect of that culture is negative. There are many good things about every culture. As a matter of fact, there are more good things about every culture. There are more good things about every single individual than there are negative. And that's why I'm going to begin my speech on a very positive level, mentioning a very positive hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ says, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي. So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I am, meaning Allah is where the thoughts of His servants are with Him. أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي. I am where I am at the same level as how my servant thinks about me. Okay, so if we think high about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will be with us at that level. Allah will deal with us at that level. Allah will have the same sort of, dealing with us according to that. That's why they say that your attitude is your altitude. The higher your attitude, the higher your altitude will be. The lower your attitude, the more negative your attitude, that's how low your altitude will be. So if you want to be as high as possible, think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the best thoughts possible, the highest thoughts possible, the most positive thoughts possible. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to think of Him at the highest level and the most positive level. Our hope should always be that Allah will forgive me. Our hope should always be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to bless me. Okay? So we should never have negative thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, we never do. Okay? And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to have with our fellow human beings as well. So I'm going to try to focus on positivity. Positive in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and positivity in our relationship among each other. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنَا مَعَهُ إِذَا ذَكَرَنِي. I am with him when he remembers me. فَإِنْ ذَكَرَنِي فِي نَفْسِي ذَكَرْتُهُ فِي نَفْسِي. If he remembers me in himself, I will remember him in myself, to myself. وَإِنْ ذَكَرَنِي فِي مَلَئٍ ذَكَرْتُهُ فِي مَلَئٍ خَيْرٍ مِنْهُ. And if he remembers me in a gathering like we are today, I will remember him in a gathering that is better than the gathering of our gathering. And وَإِن تَقَرَّبَ إِلَيَّ بِشِبْرٍ تَقَرَّبْتُ إِلَيْهِ ذِرَاعًا. If he comes towards me, if becomes near me even a hand's length, I will come close to him a full arm's length. Okay? And if he comes close to me a full arm's length, I will go close to him double of that. And if he comes to me walking, I will go to him running. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says as narrated to us by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what do we learn from this hadith? Positivity. To be positive in our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and similarly being positive in our relationship with those around us, especially those whom we love the most. The Prophet ﷺ in many ahadith has stressed the importance of being positive. Look at the good of every single person. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يفرق مؤمنة إن سخط منها خلقا رضي منها آخر, that a believing male should never have any dislike for a believing female. If he dislikes something about her, there will always be something that he will like about her. So always focus on the positive, whether it's dealing with your family, whether it's dealing with your in-laws, whether it's dealing with your neighbors, your co-workers. Always be positive. And that's what I'm going to focus on as much as possible. The purpose of this talk is not to take sides. That's another disclaimer. I don't want to say that, all in-laws are evil, all in-laws are bad, and all, spouses are innocent and they're completely, free from blame and there's nothing wrong with them, or they're evil and the parents-in-laws are completely innocent. And, this is just a general talk to get the message across about some of the shortcomings that we have in our culture and sometimes we think is part of our religion as well, and so that we have a better understanding of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us in our relationship with our in-laws, whether it be parents-in-laws or children-in-laws. So again, being positive all the time. A teacher of mine once narrated a story. He says that an elderly scholar visited a house and he had food at the house. And after having the food, he asked the husband in the house that, is it okay if I say a couple of words to your wife? Behind the curtain. And so behind the curtain, he said some very good words, praised her cooking, that your cooking is very good, mashallah, I really enjoyed it. And she broke down in tears. She broke down in tears, and so the sheikh thought he didn't know what was going on. Maybe he said something wrong or something. What did I say wrong? And she said that I've been cooking for this person and his family for 20 years. Not once did I hear a good word coming from them about my cooking. So again, positivity, bringing positivity into our lives. How can we do that? We're very good at that when it comes to our lives outside the house. We'll say thank you. We'll say, nice words, and at work, especially. But how can we bring that into our lives at home? The very well-known scholar by the name of Hatim al-Asam. Hatim al-Asam. Now, al-Asam means deaf, right? But was he deaf? He wasn't deaf. But people called him deaf. People would call him why? Why did people start calling him deaf? It's a very interesting story. A sister came to him to ask a question, and she passed away in front of him. And as we know, we're talking about 1,000 years ago. Even today, it's considered to be, a woman would rather like to be swallowed by the earth than to have something like that happen. So Hatim al-Asam, when he saw this happening, he said to her, "Speak loudly, I can't hear you. Speak louder, I'm hard of hearing, speak louder. I can't hear you, I couldn't hear what you said." So after that, people started calling him Hatim al-Asam. He wasn't deaf. He heard what happened. He knew what happened. He heard it. But he wanted to save his sister, not real sister, but sister in Islam, from that shame. He didn't want her to go through that feeling of shame that in front of this great scholar, this happened to me. You know, people make mistakes all the time. It can happen to anybody. So he pretended to be deaf just to save her from that shame. And so people started calling him Hatim al-Asam after that. A similar story about Maulana Iyas, he's the founder of the Tablighi Jamaat. He visited a house, and the wife prepared some sweet dish. We call it kheer. It's like rice and milk, and you put sugar in it. Now, in those days, they never had utensils like we do, like a salt, shaker. And we know that this is salt because it's in the salt shaker, and then we have a separate thing for the sugar. And so there's no way we can get mixed up today. But in those days, they had very simple containers looking the same. So instead of putting sugar into the dessert, she put salt into the dessert. And she put it in front of the scholar. And there were many people around him. There were many other people there as well. And there's a huge, bowl of kheer right there for everybody to have. What do people do? Out of respect for the scholar, they give to the scholar first. So when the scholar tasted it, it was salty, it wasn't sugary. What did he do? He said, "This is so tasty, I'm going to have all of it. I'm going to have all of it, and I'm not going to let any of you have any of it." And he finished the whole bowl by himself. And the other guys sitting around, they're like, "What's going on here? Why are you so greedy?" And, this is the first time you're seeing him do this. Usually he shares with us. And so, again, he wanted to protect his sister. So he had the whole kheer, the salty kheer, right, without a single word of complaint. And later on, the wife realized her mistake. And she asked her husband, and her husband said, "No, he loved it. He loved it so much, he had the whole thing." So now, do you think he actually liked it? He didn't like it, but he forced himself to have it just to save the sister from that embarrassment. Okay? There's another story about a friend of mine who was telling me that, when they were in the Tablighi Jamaat, they were out of masjid. And what they do is that they assign, those of you who have been would know, they assign 2 individuals to do the cooking for the rest of the Jamaat, and the rest of the Jamaat is doing their work of dawah. And so once they make tea and they put they put salt into the tea instead of the sugar. And so when the tea was put onto the dastakhan and people were having it, not one single brother complained. They all drank the tea. Not one single brother complained about it. Right? So this is what you call positivity. How do we learn positivity from these incidents? That every single day of our life, we have wonderful food. Our wives cook so wonderfully for us. Just one day she makes a mistake. Why get angry on that? So many days. But look at the number of days where you had wonderful food, wonderful cooking. Why ruin all that by one single incident? Why not hide the fault of others? You have wonderful examples. So when it comes to our relationship with one another, always try to be positive. Have that positive mentality, positive thinking. My teacher would always say that, and again, I'm not generalizing, I'm not saying every single woman is like this, but he would say that I sometimes wonder, and it amazes me, and we hear about so many stories of mothers, how they bring up the children, what they go through to deliver us into this world, and all the sacrifices they make, all the love and mercy that they expend to us, and how they bring up the children. Brings us to tears sometimes when we hear about it, when we read about it, okay, when we see them, it brings us to tears. Just the sacrifice is just so great. It's amazing. He says that the same woman who gave so much love and mercy to her child, how can she become so unrelenting and so merciless when it comes to her daughter-in-law? He's just amazed that. He just can't believe how people can change so quickly. No. One is she's giving everything to the child, everything possible, all the love possible, all the mercy possible. And then all of a sudden, she becomes a completely different character, a completely different person when it comes to the relationship with Allah. So this is something where we need to create a balance. This is something where we need to sort of come to an understanding that we're not going to be able to give the same love, same mercy that we give to our biological children, but we do have to understand that our in-laws, our son-in-law, or our daughter-in-law is also a human being, and they also deserve love and mercy from us as well, especially because they are your son-in-law, they are your daughters-in-law, and they are married to your son, they are married to your daughter. So we have two extremes. And like I always say, let's try to find a middle ground when it comes to two extremes. So one extreme is that we have, horror stories that we hear about sometimes, or sometimes we read about, that take place. Recently I was listening to a lecture by Norman Ali Khan. He mentioned a story about how the daughter-in-law was being treated, and she was already being treated horribly, and once she accidentally ate from the food of her mother-in-law. She didn't know it was saved for the mother-in-law. It was maybe some sort of royal food or something, royal sweets or something, I don't know, saved for the mother-in-law, and she accidentally ate some, and the mother-in-law said something like, why don't you just take these pills and just kill yourself? You're worth nothing. You're not worth anything. Now, would any of us say something like that to a friend who accidentally maybe drank a little bit of the water, or accidentally took the water bottle, or took the bowl of kheer from you, was sitting outside, or took your biryani from you while sitting outside? Would we say that to a friend of ours? Or, But so this is the mother-in-law saying to her daughter-in-law, why don't you just die? Why don't you just take these pills? Daughter-in-law had enough at all. She was completely depressed. She went ahead and took the pills. This is in a Western country, and so she ended up in the hospital, and it became a big thing. And so obviously the social services got involved, and they did an investigation, and I think they were going to they're going to, file charges against that family or something like that. But again, we have horror stories on one side of how, one father was telling me, from Austin, he was telling me how his daughter would be given a toothbrush to clean. Take this toothbrush and clean the kitchen. And so, again, now obviously, everybody knows you can't clean the kitchen with a toothbrush. Everybody knows that. But it's just a way to, in my opinion, I don't know, I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but in my opinion, I think they just want to disgrace her as much as possible. They want her to put her in her place. They want her to know that we're in charge, and we're the masters, and you have to do what we tell you, and here, take this toothbrush and clean. Get down on your knees and clean. So we hear horror stories like that. And then on the other side, we have the other extreme where the children, when they get married, the daughter-in-law, when she comes in with the intention that no matter what happens, I'm not going to get along with my mother-in-law. I'm not going to get along with my father-in-law. And I'm going to try my best to separate my husband from his parents. That is the other extreme. That is also wrong as well. And you can't really blame them, because They hear these stories. They hear the stories of their older siblings being tortured and, being mistreated at the hands of their in-laws. So obviously it's going to affect them as well. They're going to feel like that as well. They're going to, one brother was telling me, a very young brother, who was speaking to a sister who wanted to get married to each other, and the sister was saying that, no, you can't. I don't want to live with your parents at all. Not at all. I don't want someone behind my back all the time telling me what to do. So that's their mindset. How is this mindset created? I don't want somebody behind my back telling me what to do all the time. Is that what we want in our homes? Is that what we want with our daughters-in-law? So we have two extremes. One is that where the parents-in-law go to extremes, and then we have the other extreme where the children-in-law, the daughter-in-law, or the son-in-law will go to the other extreme, and they will separate themselves from the parents. And that is the other. So we need to find a middle ground. And that's the purpose of this talk, to find a middle ground. And again, let me take you back to what the Prophet ﷺ said, that Allah says that I am at the level of how my servant thinks about me. If he thinks highly about me, I will think highly of him. We should think highly about others. Even though she may be 20 years younger than you, 30 years younger than you, think highly about her. Always be positive. Pray. That's why I always say, before you have a negative comment about somebody, and I mentioned this at another masjid where I was, they had a barbecue for the whole community. 500 people showed up. There were some who were complaining about certain things. And I mentioned that, before you complain, make sure you mention 3 good things. Look at the masjid. Look how clean the masjid is. Look at, mention how clean the masjid is. Mention how well organized things are in the masjid. Mention how good things happen in the masjid. Prayers happen. We have brothers and sisters coming for the prayers, every single prayer. Mention good things. And then whatever complaint you have, mention it to the board, mention it to whoever is in charge in the most polite manner possible. So always get yourself into the habit of mentioning 3 good things before you mention anything that is negative. So that we are habituating ourselves to think positive all the time. Because we want to always think positive. We don't want to think negative unless we absolutely have to. So the thing here is that we need to find a middle ground. And Islamically speaking, one is you have culture, then you have the moral and ethical aspect of it, and then you have the legal aspect of it. Okay, when it comes to legality, you have the law of the country, and then you have the Sharia law. From the Sharia law perspective, the daughter-in-law is not obligated to cook for her parents. Okay. One is the legal aspect, one is the moral aspect. Okay, I'm going to get to the moral aspect later. Legally, she is not, and look, listen to my words carefully. Legally, she is not obligated to cook. She cannot be forced to cook for her parents-in-law. She's not even obligated to cook for her husband, to be honest. Right? So, now, you can have a house where the wife cooks for herself, okay, and she has a little bowl, and she eats it all, and the husband comes home and cooks for himself, and he eats it all. You can have a relationship like that. Or, the wife is at home, why not cook for the husband as well? Okay, so that's a moral. She's cooking because her morals propel her to do that. Her ethics propel her to do that. And so she knows that legally she's not obligated to, but she also knows that my husband is going to come home from work completely exhausted. Why not cook for him as well? Or my parents-in-law are living with me. Why don't I cook for them? I'm young. I'm in my 20s. I have a lot of energy. They're old. They did a lot for my husband. Why don't I cook for them as well? So this is the moral aspect of it. Legally, she doesn't have to. Legally, she can just, you know, buy something or order something and finish it all herself, and then when the husband comes home, he has his own, and the parents-in-law have their own as well. The father-in-law cooks his own, the mother-in-law cooks her own food, and everybody's cooking their own food and eating their own food. If that's the kind of household you want, I mean, that's fine as well, okay? But do we always look at what's legal all the time? No. There's a moral aspect to it as well. Okay. So legally speaking, from the Sharia perspective, she is not obligated to cook. She's not obligated to clean up. That's what I mentioned last time, that, you know, if my wife doesn't clean up, I don't care. Because if she's not obligated to clean up, how can I get angry at her? You know, she's not obligated to do it. You know, we're obligated to pray 5 times a day. If we don't, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be angry with us, right? Because it's an obligation. But Allah won't be angry with us if we don't wear a hat, for example. He won't be angry with us if you don't fulfill the sunnah, like drink with 3 gulps in a sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be happy with us if we do it because we're following the sunnah, but He's not going to be angry with us if He doesn't, right? So everything needs to be understood at the level. Okay. So she's not obligated to clean the house, and she's not obligated to serve her in-laws in any way. Okay. The obligation falls upon the children, the biological children, son and daughter. So to financially provide for the parents, it's the children's, biological children's responsibility. Son and daughter equal. Okay, if the daughter is working, then she also has to provide for her parents. You don't know this, okay? Because we think that sons have to do everything. And so the daughter is working and she's saving every single penny of her pay. But no, she has to also, if she's earning and she has the money, she has to also pay financially for her parents, to look after her parents. Okay? If the parents are not working or they don't have money, then the children equally have to provide for their parents, son and daughter. Now, usually in our culture, daughters don't work, so that's why the obligation does not fall on them. They're not working. So the sons take over the responsibility. But if the daughters are working, then they have to also financially share in proportion to how much they're earning. Okay? So the in-laws, the parents-in-law, or the husband cannot force the daughter-in-law or his wife to cook or to clean up or to serve his parents in any manner. Okay? Whatever she does, and she will, inshallah, because inshallah her parents will bring her up in such a manner that she will cook. Maybe not every single day, but she will cook for everybody. She will clean up. Maybe not every single day, but she will. She will serve her parents-in-law, inshallah. But maybe not every single day. Maybe she may want to take a day off. Maybe she may want to, like when my wife was telling me that one sister was asking her that her family was having a reunion in another state, and she wanted to go. Who wouldn't want to go to a family reunion after so many years? Everybody's coming together. Who wouldn't want to go? But what did the husband say? What did the father-in-law say? The father-in-law says, no, our family is now your family. You cannot go. This is what you call torture. This is what you call extremes. This is what you call... So, she is not your servant. This actually comes from the Hindu culture. Okay, this actually is in the Hindu... I was listening to Zakir Naik, and he was saying that this is actually part of the Hindu culture, part of their religion, that the daughter-in-law is like a servant in the house. And so obviously we come from that same culture, and it's obviously because we live next to them and we live around them. A lot of us, or a lot of our forefathers, a lot of our grandparents lived among them. So obviously that's the influence. Look at our weddings. Almost from beginning to end, everything we do is based on Hindu culture, right? Except for the khutbah and the Quran recitation. Everything else is basically based on the Hindu culture. So anyways, I'm not saying all culture is wrong, but the wrong aspects have to be called out. Okay, the wrong aspects of our culture have to be called out. The wrong aspects of the Western culture given credit for and should be adopted. A lot of us do that. Okay, so legally speaking, the daughter-in-law has a lot of rights. She has rights to her privacy. The one newlywed couple was telling me, the wife was telling me that she likes to stay in her room because that's how she is. Some people are extrovert, they like to socialize, they like to, talk to people and always talking away. And there are some who are introverts, they like to stay to themselves, they don't talk as much. And so she was that type, and she would always be in her room. The parents would be downstairs watching drama and Bollywood stuff. And so they would always call her that, come down, what are you doing in your room? Just come down, come sit with us. And so she would want to be by herself, and so the parents would get angry. So do they have the right to get angry at their daughter-in-law just because she wants to stay by herself in her room? No, because she's not obligated to come down and watch TV with them. And she would tell me, I just have a newborn baby. I don't want my newborn baby to be exposed to this drama, this Bollywood stuff. So she has her right to her privacy. She does not have to come down and watch TV with her in-laws. Somebody was telling me that about another sister that when the in-laws are at home, the door of the bedroom has to stay open. I don't know where they got that from, but I don't know. It's just mind-boggling. So when the in-laws are home, when the parents-in-law are at home, the room to the bedroom door has to stay open. Why? Is she not a human being? Doesn't she deserve her own privacy? So this is where our culture goes to. And like I said, I'm not saying everybody's like that. I mean, for you, this is probably news for many of you guys over here. And you're probably like, well, I never heard of that. It's happening. It's happening among us. And so that's why I'm mentioning it. So she has full right to her privacy. What I recommend is that, a lot of you have, mashallah, big houses. Make sure she has her own room. Make sure they have their own room with a restroom inside, so that they can have full privacy with a lock on the door. So whenever they want to lock, they can lock the door. In some cultures, sometimes, again, I'm not generalizing, but the mother-in-law feels like she has the right to go through the clothes and the belongings of the wife and of her daughter-in-law. And the daughter-in-law has to hand over all her jewelry to the mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law keeps the jewelry and all that. So this is, again, this is the extremes of our culture, and this is where, our daughters are born and brought up in the West. They're born and brought up in the United States. They're not going to take this stuff. Trust me. Okay, our daughters and sisters from back home, they're a bit different. They'll take a lot of stuff. MashaAllah, Allah has given them a lot. And that's why my teachers would always say, they're like the fruits of Jannah, because they give up everything. They sacrifice everything. But what I'm seeing over here, our daughters and sisters who are born and brought up here, they're not going to take this stuff. Trust me. So if you want a good family system, if you want the traditional family system over here in the West, we can have it. But we have to step back a bit. Just step back a bit. Don't be too demanding. It can happen, and I've seen it happening. Just have to be able to understand your place, your rights, her place, her rights, the respect that she deserves, the honor that she deserves. And things can work out really well. So, again, being positive, I think that's what we need to focus on the most. And it should come from both sides. The daughter-in-law should always be positive. If she enters into the marriage with a negative attitude towards her in-laws, her parents-in-law, and then obviously it's not going to help. And a lot of the negativity comes in, and this is what I want to warn you guys about. A lot of the negativity comes in during the marriage preparation. Because one side is saying something, the other side is saying something, and they're getting to arguments, and the negativity sets in from then. A lot of the times I've seen this happen. And a lot of times when young couples will come to me and talk to me, they'll mention things that happen during the marriage preparation. So is it really worth it to spend $40,000, $50,000 on a wedding, and both of them are, spending their first couple of days together, the honeymoon phase together with negativity? One side parent angry at the other side parent. It's going to affect their life. So, this is where parents need to be parents. Sometimes parents behave like children, and that creates a problem for their children. So again, being positive all the time, sometimes you just have to give in to the other side. I mean, I had to go through that, and a lot of the things that my father wanted, I just said, let it go, let it go. I would just keep on saying, just let it go, let them have their way. Sometimes you just have to do that. And one side sometimes has to give in, and sometimes we don't want to do that, and that's where a lot of problems happen. Like, I was recently speaking to a newlywed couple, and the husband was saying, it seems like I have to do everything for her to keep her happy, and she's not willing to do anything for me. And she was saying the same thing, that no, I do everything for him, and he's not willing to do anything for me. And I'm like, okay, one of you here is going to have to give in. And they just wouldn't. They said, no, I do everything I need to, and he's saying the same thing. And so sometimes there will be times when one side will have to give. Okay? So, and that's how relationships work. Sometimes you give in. Sometimes you give in to your friend. He wants to go to this place, you give in and you go. Sometimes your friend will have to give in to you, and you go to the place he wants to go to. And this is what we learn in school. And we have friends in school, and we have to compromise. If you don't compromise, you're not going to have many friends. So anyway, going back to what I was speaking about earlier. So two extremes, how do we find the middle ground? Now, another thing that I see happening is that a lot of times the parents-in-law, especially the mother-in-law, thinks that my daughter-in-law is going to take my son away from me. If you have that negative mindset, then obviously that's going to govern how you behave. Your behavior, your attitude towards your daughter-in-law will naturally be negative, okay? And then she's going to react negatively to you as well, and you're going to think, oh, she's being disrespectful. But the negativity is coming from your side because you think of this daughter-in-law as a threat. And you think that she's going to take your son away from you. And so, again, we need to have that understanding that if you brought up your son correctly, he's going to continue to love you. Okay? And this is where one couple told me that what the husband would do is he would, every time he would find some time off from work during lunchtime, he would take his mother out. Okay, so he would take his mother out for lunch as much as possible. Every time he had time during lunch, he would take his mother out. And that created a balance between his mother and his wife because they were living in the same house. So his mother always felt threatened by the daughter-in-law. And that threat should not be there in the first place. But sometimes it comes in. So what he did, and when I heard this, I was like, wow, this is so good. This is so wonderful. What he would do is he would take his mother out for lunch as much as possible. He would take time off from work, or sometimes you have those slots during work time where you can go out and have lunch. Instead of having lunch by yourself, why not, take your mother out? That's one good way of doing it. So then he can spend time with his wife when he comes home from work. So, anyways, let's try to get rid of this negativity inside our minds, this feeling of threat that my daughter-in-law is going to take my son away from me. My son is not going to marry me anymore. Now, I don't know if this still happens, but I used to hear about it in the 90s where mothers would actually have people do black magic on their sons so that the marriage breaks up and so that the son would become hers again. And can a son love a mother? No. He can, yes, but not the same way he loves a wife. So there's two different types of love. There's many different types of love. So the same love that the son gives to the mother, it's going to be there. And it's his responsibility to express it as much as possible. The problem with us men is that we're not very good at expressing our love. We're not very good at expressing our thanks. We're not very good at expressing our gratitude. We think that, oh, I am grateful from my heart. But women, they want to hear it. People want to hear it from you. They want to hear you say, thank you, you cook really well. Thank you for cleaning up. Thank you for doing the laundry. Thank you for ironing my clothes, etc. And talking about ironing my clothes, sometimes, a couple of times, what happened was that I called my dad, and my dad called me, and I said to him, he would ask me, what are you doing? I said, I was doing this. And what's your wife doing? And she's doing this. And why is she doing that? You're supposed to be doing that. And then another time my dad would call, and I would be doing the same thing, and my dad would say to me, why are you doing it? Your wife is supposed to be doing it. So one time he's saying that I'm supposed to be doing it for my wife, and another time he's saying that my wife is supposed to be doing it. So that's how parents are. That's, when they get old, that's where sometimes we just have to listen to them and try to, be as respectful as possible. And, one thing for sure is that respect is non-negotiable. Okay? So, no matter what the other side does to you, you should still be able to find it inside yourself to be respectful. Unless it's like to an extent where your life is in danger, then of course that's like we're in that case where the daughter-in-law had took pills. And so if you go, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that yes, you will hear ugly things coming. You'll hear ugly words coming from the other side. Sometimes you just have to let it go, thinking that okay, they've reached their old age and they've reached the time in their life where they don't have that same level of patience anymore that they used to when they were younger, and that's natural. It's a natural part of life. I'm starting to feel it now that I don't have that same level of patience that I used to have when I was younger. So as we get older, naturally it comes in. So we just have to understand that. Now, a lot of times people will get into a debate a religious debate that a mother has a higher status than the wife, and others will say the wife has a higher status than the mother. And so there's nothing definitive in Islam that says that the mother has a higher status than the wife. There's nothing definitive that says the wife has a higher status. They both have a high status. They both have their rights in their own place, in their own time. So, going back to speaking about privacy, a wife does have the right, legally speaking from the Islamic perspective, to ask or to demand a separate living quarters from the parents. So if she says, I want a separate house, she has the right. If she says, I want to live in a separate apartment, she has that right. Okay? Now, it's up to the family, it's up to the husband to come together. Now, if you can afford it, then fine. Not everybody can afford that. So this is where the wife needs to understand that, okay, because we can't afford it, my husband can't afford it, I still love my husband because I didn't marry him for the money. I married him because I loved him. So, because I love him, I'm going to bear living with his parents, and I'm going to try to be my best as much as possible. But she does have the right to demand her own living quarters. Now, I don't want you to go home and say, well, see, even the Sheikh is on my side, and look, the Sheikh said this, so I want you to do this now and right now. No. Understand that one is the legal aspect of it, one is the moral aspect of it. A lot of times when you first marry, you're just settling down. It's best to be with the parents so that you can save more money until a time will come when you can buy a house. So for a little while, stay with your parents until you're financially stable enough to move into your own place. And then once you move into your own place, after a while, invite your in-laws to come and stay with you, because your in-laws are not going to be able to work for the rest of their life. A time is going to come when they're going to become old. And that is where it will become the son's responsibility to look after his parents. So he has multiple choices. If the wife says, well, you know, Islam says this, so I'm not going to serve your parents at all, I'm not going to help them at all. So the son has multiple choices. Either he leaves his job and he stays at home and looks after his parents because it's his obligation to leave his job. What will that mean? That will mean that the wife will not be able to enjoy the same level of luxury that she used to, because obviously there's no income coming in. The husband is staying at home, or at least one income is going to be gone. So the husband stays home, looks after. Okay, yeah. Let me just quickly finish up. Or the other choice he has is that they hire somebody to look after the parents. And that means that one income is going to go into paying for that person that's looking after the parents. Okay? Or the other option is that the wife takes on the responsibility that, okay, my husband is working, and instead of him leaving his job and looking after his parents, why not I just do it? It's not my responsibility, but I will do it anyways, just for the sake of maintaining harmony in the house, and because I care. Because there's something inside me that makes me care for aging parents or aging people in general. So I'm gonna serve my parents as to the best of my ability, because I know I'm going to be rewarded for it by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whenever your wife does something, cooking or serving your parents or cleaning or anything like that, it's a favor that she's doing. So treat it like a favor. It's not an obligation, so you can't just shrug it off, oh, you're supposed to be doing it anyway. No, it's a favor that she's doing. So treat it as a favor. And again, positivity. You know, one of the things that there was a study I read somewhere online, that what is it that keeps husband and wife together? Okay, what is it that keeps them together the longest? And the majority of the couples that were surveyed, they said that words of affirmation. Words of affirmation is what keeps couples together for the long term. Always complimenting others. Complimenting others. Even if it's a small thing, compliment them. Compliment. Keep on complimenting. And what I say is, inshallah, I'll end with this, is that husband and wives and mothers-in-laws and daughters-in-laws and fathers-in-laws and sons-in-laws should be cheerleaders for each other. What is a cheerleader? The team can be losing, right? They could be losing like 50-8, right? But once their team scores a touchdown, what are they going to do? They're going to jump up and down, right? So they made 50 mistakes already, right? And they know their team is going to lose if they're in the final quarter, and there's 5 minutes left. They know that there's no way they're going to come back and be able to score that many points. They know they're going to lose. But still, if they score a point, what are they going to do? Jump up and down, right? So they're going to forget about all the points they lost and all the negativities, all the mistakes they made. They're just going to jump up and down. They're going to cheer on each other, right? So husbands and wives should be cheerleaders for others. No matter how many mistakes you make, you just continue to cheer each other on. Mother-in-law should be a cheerleader for her daughter-in-law. Father-in-law should be a cheerleader for his daughter-in-law and son-in-law, and vice versa. Everybody should be cheerleaders for one another. No matter what mistake you make, once you do something good, you're going to jump up and down, and you're going to, say up, you're going to yell and scream and like what they do. So be positive. So if the cheerleaders say, if they said, okay, we're going to lose anyway, why should I waste my energy and jump up and down? They're being paid for it, that's of course, so they have to do it. But it doesn't matter, right? You still jump up and down, and so be cheerleaders for one another. I remember I attended a non-Muslim wedding a long time ago. And so it was a second wedding for both. So they both had children from other parents. And so I remember, now culturally they have vows for one another. They say vows to one another. At this wedding, what I saw was that first they had the parents on one side stand up and give words of support to the marriage, that I support the marriage. And then the parents from the other side stand up and they gave words of support for the marriage. And then they had their vows to each other, and then they had vows to each other's children, that I will love and support you the same way I love and support my own children. And then the other said the same to the other's children. So there's vows coming from all sides to each other. And even though we don't have that in our culture, but we can adopt that, at least among ourselves. We don't have to do it in front of everybody, but we can do it among ourselves. We should have meetings in our homes, once a week have meetings where the parents are sitting down, the son is there, the daughter-in-law is there. Have meetings. What do we do wrong? What can we do better so that you can feel more at home, you can feel more comfortable at home? And another thing that, very quickly, I know I'm going on forever. Inshallah, we can have question and answer after the prayer as well. When I was speaking to a sister, because the brother was telling me that I want my wife to live with me, with my parents, so that's the type of wife I'm looking for. So he wanted me to speak to a specific sister, and I asked her, are you willing to live with your parents? And one of the things she said was that I don't want to be accountable for every single thing I do. If I live with his parents, I'm going to have to tell them. Every time I go out, I'm going to have to tell them. Every time I come in, I'm going to have to tell them where I was. Every time I go anywhere, I'm going to have to tell them. So, a daughter-in-law has the right to leave the house anytime she wants without telling her parents-in-law. She is not accountable to the parents-in-law. She has to go get groceries. Yeah, if she's going to travel more than 48 miles, then she needs her husband with her. That's a whole different issue. We can talk about that another time. If she needs to travel more than 48 miles, then of course she needs permission from her husband and all that. But if she just wants to go out to talk to her friends or to be out with or to do groceries, she is not accountable to her in-laws. Like I remember one brother was telling me that they had planned on traveling. He had bought tickets. He had bought tickets for his wife to travel abroad to see her family, and his parents told him, no, cancel the ticket. So parents-in-law don't have the right to force their son, after paying for a ticket, paying so much for the ticket, to cancel the ticket just like that. So they have a lot of freedom, and so this is where we need to sort of step back, and if we want, over here in the United States, to be able to have the same extended family that we have back home, we cannot expect to treat our daughters-in-laws or sons-in-laws the same way we used to back home, or people do back home even today. Like I said, I'm not generalizing, but it does happen, and we just have to sort of step back, understand, give freedom, it's okay, it's not going to be the end of the world, your son is not going to run away from you, he's still going to love you, and just having that feeling. If you have a strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, trust me, you won't care if others don't love you at all. So on that, I would like to end I have a lot more stuff to say, but I'm sorry, I don't have time to go over it. But again, I think words of affirmation are the most important. Okay? Honor your daughter-in-law in the presence of your son. Compliment and never criticize. And if you really do have to complain, like I said, mention 3 good things first. Find the right time first. So don't be waiting by the door that as soon as your son comes home, you're going to go to him and complain. Without even saying salam, just go and start complaining. Guys have told me this, that without even saying salam, my mother will come to me and start complaining about my wife. So let your son come home, let him rest, let him have his rest. And during the weekend sometime, when everybody's at rest, then complain to your son if you really have to about his wife. I know it's 9:30 to be sure. 9:45. Oh, 9:45. Okay, so let's have question and answer.
So question and answer we have given in the electronic
The daughter-in-law has a problem with one of the parents-in-law, and she talks about it. Okay, I think this is a very good question. And this is where I, like, a lot of times what I see among young couples is that if they have problems with each other, like if a wife is having problems with her husband, the wife will go to her parents.
What is the question?
I'm sorry?
Repeat the question.
Okay, the question is about something else, but I just want to, I'll get to the question later. So, the young wife will go to her parents and tell everything, you know, sometimes even the most private things to her parents about her husband. So this is not right as well, okay? And on the other hand, sometimes the husband is a mommy boy, and he will say everything, every single problem he has with his wife, he'll go and tell his mother about it. And then that creates negativity in the mother, and then the mother has negativity towards her daughter-in-law. So you want to keep things at bay as much as possible. Keep the negativities at bay as much as possible. So over here, the question is, if a daughter-in-law has a problem with one of the parents-in-law, and she talks about it with her husband, is this backbiting? And will she lose her good deeds? It's a very good question. So when it comes to things like this, as long as you don't go around telling everybody else, that's the worst thing you can do. You talk to your husband with the intention that he will do something about it. He will rectify the situation. So as long as your intention is sincere, okay? And like for example, I know somebody's son is doing something, okay? I go to the father and say to the father that, look, I saw your son do this and that, because I know that the father can do something about it, right? The father has the authority to talk to his son and rectify the situation. But if I go around telling everybody that so-and-so's son does this, then that's a sin, that's backbiting. But if I go to the father and tell him that your son is doing this, if you want to do something about it, if you want to talk to him, please do. That is not backbiting, because my intention is to rectify the situation. So in the same matter here, if a daughter-in-law has a problem with one of the parents-in-law, and she talks about it with her husband, then that is certainly something that she should do, and it will not be backbiting as long as her intention is sincere. And she will not lose her good. Very good question. Make dua. One thing that will create positivity is make dua for your in-laws, for your parents-in-law, or your daughter-in-law, sons-in-law. Make dua for them. Constantly make dua for them. Make dua for their happiness. Because, look, we come from a collectivist society, and we want to be a collectivist society. What does it mean to be a collectivist society? The Western culture is individualistic, whereas our culture is collectivist. Collectivist society, according to a sociologist, is that one individual's success is the whole family's success. Okay? So, if your daughter-in-law is successful, that means your whole family will be successful, your son will be successful. Your daughter-in-law's happiness is your son's happiness, and it should be your happiness as well. So, again, we should get rid of this negativity and understand that your daughter-in-law's happiness is your happiness is your daughter-in-law's happiness, your daughter-in-law's happiness is your son's happiness, and vice versa. So, again, being positive, try to be as positive as possible. It's just like cheerleaders, like I said, they're always positive, they know the team's going to lose, right? But still, as soon as they score a point, they're going to jump up and down. That's how we should be. Any more questions? I'm sorry. One sister mentioned to me that she's been married for 30 years and her mother-in-law still makes her feel as if she's not good enough. Just imagine 30 years. Just imagine your own daughter having to go through that. It's the amount of depression that daughter has to go through. Any more questions?
think the sisters have another question.
Sorry?
I think the sisters
Yeah.
have another question.
Again, be understanding. Try to understand as best as possible. Remember, your daughter-in-law was not raised the same way you raised your children. Okay? She comes from a different family. She was raised completely differently. You raised your children completely differently. I hear this a lot in our culture that didn't your parents raise you correctly? A lot of husbands say that to their wives. Did your parents raise you correctly? So this, again, is very rude, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. Because you're talking about somebody's parents. I mean, think about it. So try to be understanding, try to be forgiving as much as possible. The question is, the parents-in-law have said to other people something about the daughter-in-law that is not true. Is it wrong for the daughter-in-law to approach these people and correct them, especially if it will embarrass the parents-in-law? The best thing is that you want to try to keep arguments and negativity at bay as much as possible. So number one, over here, the parents-in-law should not have gone and told other people. So that's their mistake. They should not have told other people. And it should be their responsibility to rectify it, to go to them and tell them that, okay, what we said about our daughter-in-law is not true. We take it back. Please don't, believe in it. If they don't do that, then of course she has the right to defend herself and let it be known that it's not true. But she should not intentionally embarrass her parents-in-law. She should just try to present it in a way, the best way possible, that they've reached old age and I'm not a perfect person, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I have made mistakes in the past, but in this situation, this is the explanation, and this is what really happened. So, you don't want to take revenge. That, okay, they said this about me to everybody, I'm going to go and tell it. They said it to 10 people, I'm going to say bad things about them to 100 people. No. You don't want to be vengeful. You don't want to take revenge all the time. You want to be forgiving, merciful as much as possible. So try to, if you do go out and try to clarify yourself and defend yourself, try to minimize the damage as much as possible. Good question. Is this a good question? Once relationships have deteriorated, how can you get them back to an even feel? Is that feel or even level? How do you start again and begin to forgive? That's a very good question, very important question. Again, this depends on how far it has deteriorated. And divorce is an option. Keep that in mind. A lot of people think that divorce is not an option. But having said that, try your best. It is possible. This is where I say that imams are not therapists. We were not educated to be therapists. We were educated to understand the Sharia, understand the Quran, the Hadith. And a lot of people think imams are therapists and they can provide, they can solve problems. So I would recommend to go to a marriage therapist and get advice from them as well. I mean, there's a lot of people, for some reason, think it's haram to go to a non-Muslim marriage therapist. I mean, from age 4 to like age 23, every single teacher in your life was a non-Muslim, right? We're learning everything from non-Muslims except the Quran and Islam that we learn from our teachers, Muslim teachers. But we're surrounded by non-Muslims, and they have a lot of good things. They share the same marital values that we do. Christians are more strict when it comes to marriage. They don't even allow divorce, okay, unless there was infidelity. You have to stay together. So marriage therapists, even if they're non-Muslim, I would recommend non-Muslim because they will keep themselves confidential. They have to, otherwise they'll lose their license. On the other hand, one reason why I don't recommend going to an imam is because that same brother prays behind the imam, right? And if his faults are put in front of the imam, he's not going to want to pray behind the imam anymore. He's not going to want to come to the masjid anymore because he's going to be embarrassed. It's natural. We all have that feeling of shame inside us. So he's going to feel ashamed every time he sees the imam, and every time the imam sees him, he's going to, so that's why I recommend going to a non-Muslim marriage therapist. And even if it's $100 an hour, it's worth it. If it's going to save your marriage, it's worth it. Go to a non-Muslim marriage therapist. And if you feel that they're telling you something that's un-Islamic, then go to the imam and say that this is what the therapist said. Is it okay if we do this? Is it okay for us to accept this or to believe in it? So, we all have been educated in Islam enough to know that if they're telling us to do something which you don't feel comfortable with, then you go to an imam and ask, this is what the therapist said, is it okay if we do it? So, but I would say 90% of the time they're going to tell you to do things that is Islamically acceptable. So do not shy away from going to a marriage therapist. Trust me, it's better than going to an imam, because go to an imam, then the brother is not going to feel comfortable praying behind the imam anymore or coming in front of the imam anymore. So, do take advantage of the resources we have in our community. And they even have marriage therapists for those who can't afford to go to a marriage therapist. A lot of churches have very good programs. I've been to a couple of programs myself just to learn from them so that I can implement it in my counseling. And I found their marriage classes to be very good. They teach about emotion, how to understand emotion. Because emotions, we're not taught emotion in the university. We're not taught about emotion in the madrasa. We're not taught about emotion in an Islamic class. So how do we understand emotions? How do we learn about emotions? Marriage therapists are very good at that. And there are particular classes that I've attended, I can give you the link to them, where they focus just 8 hours of focus on emotion. How should you be at work, and how should you be at home? A lot of times we want to be at home the same way we are at work, and that makes things worse. Okay, we're engineers. Everything has to be precise. Everything has to be exact. And 2 + 2 is 4. And at home 2 + 2 is 5. Just leave that. Okay. So when you're at home, 2 + 2 is kids. They're too young. So at home 2 + 2 is 5. At work 2 + 2 is 4. That's the mentality you should have. Like Umar radiallahu anhu said, in the home with your family, you should be like them. Right? Do they care about us? They don't care about being impolite. They don't care about, look at them. They're just playing around. Right? That's how you should be at home. Okay? At work, you can't be like that. At work, you can be like that, and you're going to be in trouble. So at work, you're going to be a different person. At home, you're going to be a different person. Any more questions?
Any more questions? Yes, sir? Going twice.
Okay. All right. So if you have any feedback or any comments about my talk, please do let me know. One book I really like to recommend to you is it's called The 5 Languages of Love, written by Gary Chapman. The 5 Languages of Love. I have it on my phone. It's a very good book. I've read it. I think it's very beneficial for every couple. When Christian couples have issues, do they go to a non-Christian counselor, marriage counselor? Do they go to an? And I understand where you're coming from. Whoever wrote this, they would if they were in a Muslim country, and if we had a marriage therapist, they would. I'm sure they would. And like I said, I'm not saying you have to go to a non-Muslim marriage therapist. The reason why I recommend, again, The reason why I recommend it is for the sake of your privacy, for the sake of the couple's privacy. Because, again, you're going to have to come and pray behind that same imam. Okay, if you don't want to go to a non-Muslim therapist, what you can do is contact a Muslim therapist. You can do that, Muslim marriage therapist. Alhamdulillah, we have them in, I don't know if we have any in Austin or not, but I know in San Antonio, Houston, there are marriage therapists, Muslim marriage therapists that you can go to. Or you can talk to an imam from another city so that you don't feel that level of embarrassment when you go to the masjid. And that's why I get more calls from people outside of Austin than I do from within Austin. And I guess that's the reason, so that they probably feel ashamed going to their local imam, so that's why they want to call somebody from outside. Sometimes I get calls from people I don't even know, right? Most of the calls come from people I don't even know. So, again, the reason why I said going to non-married therapists, the reason why I recommend it is for the sake of your